Hi, my name is Melanie Tuberman. For my presentation, I decided to focus on the different ways in which people use Finstagram versus Instagram. So, as you may already know, Instagram is a social media platform in which people post pictures with captions underneath, either describing them or either like a quote or something short. Whereas Finstagram is a fake Instagram account, so people use these to post more raunchy things or things that they wouldn't want the general population seeing. They're generally set on private mode, and they have a much smaller audience. Whereas Instagram has a much broader audience, whereas family members could be following or potential employers could see. So people are much more careful with what they post. For my presentation, I interviewed 6 different people. I did 3 guys and 3 girls, all between the ages of 19 and 21, who all had Instagram and Finstagram accounts. And they all said pretty much the same thing, that the way that they use their Instagram is to show the world a different version of themselves, a more clean and polished version. While for Finstagram, it was to show their friends what their daily life was really like and to pretty much give them a monologue of what was going through their head when things happened. There are many ways that I was able to connect my findings with course concepts. For instance, I used Tannen's frames, Hymes's speaking, Bauman and Briggs' different ways of looking at performance, indexes, the concept of identity, and also the concept of media and media ecology were relevant. So for Tannen's frames, Instagram is more of a strict frame. There's a cleaner set of language that is more tailored and carefully selected. There's usually a shorter text with a more informative frame, pretty much giving the audience just a little piece of information they need to know. However, for Finstagram, there's a much looser frame, more casual with less formal language. It's much more expressive with usually longer texts, and it's almost more of a rant or an inner monologue. It's much more expressive. For speaking, this relates to it for 3 different ways. So for setting, it really depends on which account you're using. So this is heavily setting centric. So if you're using a Instagram, you're going to be posting different things than if you're using a Finstagram. This also relates to participant, whereas for Finstagram, it's a much closer, smaller audience, whereas for Instagram, it's a much wider range of people that are seeing this. For norms as well, Finstagram is much more loose. There aren't very many norms, and people pretty much post whatever they feel like. However, for Instagram, there's a much more strict set of norms, and you're posting things that aren't going to raise any questions. They're much more politically correct. They're things that you're not worried that people are going to raise an eyebrow at. This also relates to indexes. So there are many ways to tell whether you're looking at an Instagram or Finstagram. And some of the ways that the people I interviewed explained was that for Instagram, it's a much more polished, clearer picture. It's usually aesthetically pleasing. Things are posed. There's it's usually a public setting, but some people do want it on private. The account name is also usually the person's full name or either first name, but it's never really something like a random username. It's generally the person's name. Also, the picture is a picture of the person. However, for Finstagram, most people don't want these accounts traced back to them. They don't want them to be easily found unless they want them to be found. So they're usually a different name with a random picture or something else. Also, pictures on these accounts can be more blurry and quote unquote ugly. That doesn't really matter what is on there. For tone, the tone of an Instagram is usually more formal. There can be jokes in it, but it's generally more tailored and calm. However, for Finstagram, one of the people I interviewed described her Finstagram as ruthlessly sarcastic, which I thought perfectly described a lot of people's Finstagrams. They're generally like more joking and they'll poke fun at things or there'll be complaints and things like that. Next, I want to talk about media. So, a media, as you remember from class, is the conduit or channel that has profound impacts on language. So, the word Finstagram didn't even exist before this platform was created. Neither did Instagram. So, these have already become part of our daily language. And it shows how media helps to bring about new language and change the way we speak. Also, hashtags are used a lot on Instagram, which shows the impact of media on language. They're usually shorter sentences on Instagram, more like little bits of a sentence. They're not usually full sentences, and the grammar isn't really paid attention to as much. Also, for media ecology. So, media ecology is when you choose a certain channel to fit what you are talking about and the needs for the conversation. Although these sometimes overlap, there's a clear difference for Finstagram and Instagram. So when you want to use a Finstagram, your need is more getting information out to the broader public just to show them what's happening in your life. Whereas for a Finstagram, it's something that you want to be more personal. So you're picking this thing to be more like entertaining to the audience you're looking at. People often assume for Instagram that people don't really read the caption. They usually just double click the picture to like it and move right on. However, for Finstagram, people expect their audience to read what they're writing more and be engaged and interested. This also relates to performance. So Instagram and Finstagram are both more of a constative type of performance, which is descriptive. So Instagram, the caption often explains what's happening in the picture. It's usually a really quick blurb. There could be like a happy birthday or something really quick. But for Finstagram, there's a much deeper explanation and longer text. And it's usually an explanation of either the person's mood at the time or what happened in the picture and things like that. So I have a couple of examples of someone's Instagram versus their Finstagram. So as you can see, the person's Instagram is a much shorter caption. She's tailored to the pic. She's very posed. She has a clear idea of what she wanted to say. Clearly, she wrote always having an existential crisis. So she's using a quick quote and just explaining what's going on. And then for this picture, she has a Drake concert, which was a very big deal for her. And she used one of his lyrics to say, "He took away all my woes." So she was really just using a quick thing to describe it and keep her followers up to date. But however, for her Instagram, she has much less aesthetically pleasing pictures. This is just a bunch of text. And then she has a long passage describing what's going on. It's not really something that people on an Instagram would want to read, but people on the Finstagram want to see what she's doing in her day-to-day life. You can also see in this picture, there's a picture of just her food and a book, and it's just saying how she's living her day-to-day life and how she's found like solace in poetry and things like that. So this also relates to Bauman and Briggs' 4 stages of performance. So initially there's the attention to the message, and it's presented to the audience, and the audience evaluates, and then something changes as a result. So this isn't as relevant for Instagram, even though there is a little bit of attention given to the message and it is presented to an audience, but the audience's evaluation is generally very quick and nothing generally changes as a result. However, for a Finstagram, there's much closer attention to the message behind the picture. And the thing that changes as a result is that the people are more informed about the person's life and they're more attentive and they know what's happening on a day-to-day basis and have more of an idea of who that person is and what their identity is. So that brings me to my next point of identity. So identity is the way we present ourselves to the world and how we craft a version of ourselves, which also can tie into performance. It's us performing a version of ourselves. So our social media identity is a social construct in a way. So for Instagram, it's very superficial. You're constructing the way in which you want to be received. We project ourselves into the world and how we want to be received. So for Instagram, a lot of people want to be seen as culturally up to date and very put together and want to be very PC and just want people to receive us in a positive light. However, for Finstagram, it's usually we want it to be received in a way that people understand us better. So they want to be able to present how they truly are to their friends and their close relatives who they might have following them as well. Language is really important in the way that we shape our identity. So for Instagram, it's much cleaner language. There's rarely any slang. There's hardly any cursing. People are very careful in what they say. But for Finstagram, it changes and it's much more broad use of slang words and curse words. People usually don't care if they use curse words. And it shows how our identity can change. People often say that Instagram is more of like a fake version of ourselves, but it's really just us presenting the way in with our best selves in a sense. So, in conclusion, it's clear that there are stark differences between the ways in which you use Instagram and Finstagram. While Finstagram has a much more personal side to it, it allows us to express our true personalities. But Instagram also has value in the fact that it allows us to tailor our identities to the way we want the world to see us.